In the heart of glamorous Paris, where cobblestone streets meet the sweet scent of freshly baked bread, one small bakery stands quietly against the odds. Elise, a passionate and determined baker, pours everything she has into her tiny shop, kneading dough by hand, chasing dreams through flour and fire. But behind her warm smile lies mounting debt and a growing threat. A ruthless rival who will stop at nothing to take everything she's built. Enter Julien, a quiet, kind-hearted man who visits for bread but stays for something far more meaningful. What Elise doesn't know is that Julien is not who he seems. Behind his modest demeanor is a fortune and a secret mission to protect her without ever being discovered. As sabotage, betrayal, and whispers of scandal close in, Elise finds herself at a crossroads between trust and survival, and just when everything seems to fall apart, a revelation turns her world upside down. Will she discover who truly stands behind her, or will secrets tear apart the very bond that could save her? Stay with us as we dive into a powerful story of love, born not from wealth, but from silent sacrifice, fierce loyalty, and the unshakable belief in someone's worth. Hit subscribe for more unforgettable tales of resilience, hidden devotion, and the quiet heroes we never see coming. Paris, mornings held a kind of poetry street lamps dimming just as the scent of warm baguettes drifted through cobblestone alleys. On Rue Sainte-Claire, tucked between a bookstore and a flower stand, stood a small bakery named Douceur d'Elise. Elise Moralo was already inside, flour dusted across her apron and a streak on her cheek she hadn't noticed. She wasn't just baking, she was praying. Not in words, but in movement. Her hands folded dough with care, her eyes scanning the ledger by the counter. 2 missed payments, 1 final notice. She glanced at the aging espresso machine and sighed. "Come on, darling. Just a few more weeks," she whispered, not to the machine, but to herself. The front door chimed. In stepped a man in a dark wool coat, raindrops glistening on his shoulders. He looked around the shop as if he'd walked into a dream he didn't expect to find. "Bonjour," Elise greeted, brushing flour from her hands. "First time here?" "Yes," he replied, his voice gentle but steady. "The smell pulled me in." "Then the bread's doing its job." She offered a faint smile. "Fresh out of the oven. Would you like a loaf or something sweeter?" He looked at the display rows of pain au chocolat, almond croissants, fruit tarts. But it was Elise he kept glancing at, the quiet pride in her work, the hint of exhaustion beneath her smile. "I'll take a rustic loaf, and maybe one of those lemon tarts?" She nodded. "Good choice. It's my grandmother's recipe." As she wrapped his items, he added, "I'm Julian." "Elise," she said, handing over the bag. "If you like it, come back. We could use a loyal customer." Julian offered a soft chuckle. "I have a feeling I will." He left, the door's bell chiming behind him, but the warmth of their interaction lingered in the shop longer than the scent of butter. Julian walked several blocks before stopping to look back toward the bakery. He removed his gloves and tucked them in his coat, pulling out his phone. "Mark," he said into the receiver, "I'm going to need a quiet assistant. Someone who can move small shipments flour, butter, vanilla without linking it to me." Mark hesitated. "For business or personal reasons?" "Both," Julian replied, "and it's not charity. It's important." As he ended the call, Julian glanced down at the tart in his hand. It was simple, honest, just like Elise. Back in the bakery, Elise leaned against the counter once the last customer left. She wiped sweat from her brow and checked her phone. Still no reply from the ingredient supplier about the late invoice. The truth weighed heavily on her. She was drowning. Rent was due, equipment failing, and the regulars had thinned since Marcel's glitzy new bakery opened 2 blocks over. She looked out the window, where the gray Paris sky mirrored her mood. Then she spotted him, Julien, standing across the street, watching her shop like someone watching the last flame of a candle. She tilted her head. He gave a small wave, then walked away. Odd. Kind, but odd. Elise turned the open sign to closed, locked the door, and whispered to no one in particular, maybe tomorrow will be better. She didn't know that the man she'd just met wasn't just a kind stranger. He was the reason tomorrow would be better. Elise balanced a tray of madeleines with one hand while answering the shop phone with the other. Douceur d'Elise, bonjour, she said, trying to sound cheerful. Madame Moreau, came a clipped voice. This is Pierre from Vignes & Fils Flour. I'm calling to inform you that due to revised distribution agreements, our prices will increase by 15%, effective immediately. Her stomach sank. 15%? She repeated. But we've worked together for 3 years. That hike, it's not manageable for me. I'm sorry, Pierre replied without emotion. It's not negotiable. Our hands are tied. Elise hung up, lips pressed tightly, a silent storm brewing behind her eyes. She pulled out her notebook and did quick math. The numbers didn't lie. That price bump would eat whatever profit she had left. She stared at the order list on the wall. The pastry boxes for the charity luncheon tomorrow. The wedding cake due Friday. She needed flour. She needed butter. And she needed answers. Later that morning, she stepped out for a brief break, her apron still dusted with powdered sugar. As she rounded the corner to the small courtyard, she found Julien seated on a bench beneath a sycamore tree, sipping espresso from a paper cup. Elise, he said warmly, you okay? You look like you've wrestled a croissant and lost. She let out a strained laugh and sat beside him, her arms crossed tightly. It's the suppliers, she admitted. My regular flour distributor just jacked up prices out of nowhere. I called around. Same thing. Almost like someone's buying loyalty. Julien's jaw tensed. Do you think it's deliberate? I don't know, but Marcel's new shop down the street? He's been trying to buy me out for months. First it was polite offers. Now it's... She exhaled sharply. It's pressure and threats. Julien looked at her carefully, watching the way she tried to laugh it off even as her voice cracked around the edges. Have you considered selling? No. Her answer was immediate. This place is all I have left. It was my mother's dream to open it, and I promised I'd keep it alive. Marcel can build his empire, but he won't take this. Julien nodded slowly. Then you fight, and maybe someone fights with you. Elise looked at him, puzzled. I can't ask you to get involved. You didn't ask, he said gently, and you wouldn't have to. She blinked at that. Something unspoken passed between them, brief, soft, but unmistakable. That evening, Julien made a quiet call from his flat overlooking the Seine. I need a few favors, he said to his assistant. Find me 3 local flour and dairy distributors that Marcel hasn't touched yet. Pay them extra if you must, but keep my name out of it. I want high-quality ingredients delivered under a generic name. And what do you want them to charge? The assistant asked. Just enough to make it feel real, but still affordable. Don't make it look like charity. It has to feel like luck. After ending the call, Julien leaned on the windowsill, watching the city glow gold beneath the evening sky. Paris had taught him many things: how to charm, how to close deals, how to shield his heart. But Elise, she was teaching him something different. The next morning, Elise opened her email to find an invoice from a company she'd never heard of, Valmont Artisan Supplies, with premium ingredients priced even lower than her previous distributor. Her eyes widened. No way, she whispered. She hesitated, suspicious, but desperation nudged her forward. She placed a small test order. When it arrived the next day on time, high quality and neatly packed, she blinked in disbelief. Julien walked in just as she unpacked the shipment. New supplier? He asked casually. Yeah, some miracle out of nowhere, she said, still trying to make sense of it. Julien smiled and offered no further comment. and Elise, too weary to question a blessing, tucked the moment into her heart like a small thread of hope. She had no idea that the stranger who bought her bread was also the quiet force helping her keep the oven warm. The morning rush had slowed, but Elise moved with the same focused rhythm, folding dough, wiping counters, piping fresh raspberry cream into flaky pastries. The scent of caramelized butter filled the air like a warm embrace, but worry clung to her like flour on her apron. She glanced at the delivery receipt again. Valmont Artisan Supplies. Still, no address listed, just a phone number that rang to voicemail and a polite French voice promising to return the call. She had tried twice already. No answer. Julien arrived just before noon. He never came at the same time. It made his visits feel like small surprises, unplanned, unforced. Today, he brought with him a quiet calm that soothed her nerves more than she realized. "Your croissants have become a local legend," he said as he bit into one with a soft crunch. "I think I saw 2 tourists taking selfies with the display outside." Elise smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. If only selfies paid the rent. Julien tilted his head. "Still tight?" She hesitated. "Tighter than I'd like to admit. Sales are steady now, thanks to this miracle supplier. But if something changes again, I don't have a safety net." Julien set his pastry down. "You ever think maybe you've got someone watching over you?" She blinked. "You mean God?" He smiled faintly. "Something like that." Across town, Marcel leaned over a cafe table, his phone pressed tightly to his ear. "You're telling me she found a new supplier?" he barked. His contact on the other end, a supplier he'd paid handsomely to blacklist Elise, stammered out a reply. "She's getting ingredients from someone called Valmont. We can't trace it. Looks like they only supply to her." Marcel's jaw clenched. "Then find out who's behind it, and make sure they understand who owns this part of town." He ended the call, his eyes narrowing at the thought of someone quietly defying him. Elise was supposed to fold. He'd made sure of it. No one challenged Marcel Bourdin in his own arrondissement. Back at the bakery, a woman entered just before closing, sharp blazer, bright lipstick, hair done like she was heading to a gala. "Bonjour," she said, voice laced with polite condescension. "I'm Isabelle Giroux, food columnist for Le Goût Parisien." Elise looked up, startled. "Oh, I didn't expect a visit. Did someone send you?" Isabelle smiled coolly. "Anonymous tip. Said you were a rising gem tucked away on Rue de Lune." Elise swallowed. "Would you like to try something?" "I already have." Isabelle held up a box of madeleines she'd purchased earlier. Lovely texture, surprising depth of flavor. She paused, watching Elise carefully. "I'm writing a spotlight column. Keep your eyes on the Thursday edition." Elise stood frozen for a moment after she left. Then she turned to Julien, who had stayed behind to fix a stuck cabinet hinge. "Do you think someone's trying to help me?" Julien didn't look up. "Maybe the world's just starting to see what I've seen from day one." 2 days later, Elise opened the newspaper and nearly dropped her coffee. Right beneath the bold masthead was a full-color spread. "The heart of Rue de Lune. Elise Brousseau's bakery is the soul of Parisian pastry." The article was glowing poetic even. It praised her technique, her story, her quiet charm, and it named her bakery as the can't-miss stop for food lovers this season. By noon, there was a line around the corner. Elise worked through the rush with her sleeves rolled high and her eyes shining. Julien stopped by late, watching from the doorway for a while before stepping in. "You look radiant," he said, watching her beam at the last customer. She walked over, tired but glowing. "I don't know what's happening, but it's like someone cracked the sky open and let in the sun." Julien simply smiled. Marcel, meanwhile, watched from across the street. His assistant stood beside him, pale-faced. "Whoever helped her," Marcel muttered. "They just declared war." The next morning, Elise stepped into the bakery and felt the strange hush hanging in the air. Normally, by 8 a.m., the shop buzzed with warm greetings and the clatter of espresso cups. But today, customers entered with hesitant smiles. Some glanced at her pastries and whispered behind hands. Others walked out without buying anything at all. By noon, it was undeniable something was wrong. "Elise," murmured Sophie, her part-time assistant, as she wiped down the counter. "Did you see this?" She slid a folded tabloid toward her. Elise unfolded it slowly. Her breath caught. A small, venomous write-up on page 5. "Too sweet to be true? Local baker accused of cutting corners with pre-made mixes." No author name, no sources, just vague claims that Elise had been faking freshness with store-bought ingredients. Elise felt her stomach twist. Where did this come from? Sophie shrugged. People on Rue Marceau said Marcel's assistant was handing them out. Her throat went dry. Marcel, of course. Later that afternoon, Julian walked in just as she was wiping tears from her cheeks with the back of a flour-dusted hand. "Elise?" She blinked up at him, trying to steady her voice. "Have you ever watched something you built crumble without a single blow? Just rumor and silence?" Julien stepped closer but didn't touch her. "I heard. The article. It's garbage." "That doesn't stop people from believing it," she whispered. "I feel powerless." Julien's expression darkened, though his voice stayed soft. "You're not powerless. You're just under attack by someone too cowardly to show their face." She tried to smile, but it faltered. He continued gently, "Let me help. You've already done enough, Julien. Just coming by your support, it means more than you know." He nodded, though he said nothing more. Not about the journalist he'd contacted 2 weeks ago, not about the ad space he'd quietly purchased for next month's edition of Paris Gourmand. His help wasn't meant for thanks, it was for her survival. Meanwhile, in Marcel's office lined with marble and brass, he lit a cigar and smirked across his massive desk. "She's folding," he muttered, scanning social media posts with headlines like, "Baker's Secret Exposed?" Almost too easy. His assistant, Antoine, hesitated. "Should we back off? The columnist at Le Goût Parisien is still backing her." Marcel waved a hand. "She's one puff piece away from shutting down. All we have to do now is press a little harder." He tapped his desk. "Send someone to follow her. I want to know where she gets her supplies, who she talks to, and most importantly, who's shielding her." Antoine nodded and slipped out. That night, Elise stood behind her shop window and watched the last customer of the day disappear into the twilight. Her shoulders slumped. The bakery, once full of warmth and chatter, now felt like a ship taking on water. Then came the soft jingle of the door. Julien stepped in, holding a small paper bag. "I brought something." She raised a tired eyebrow. "Pain au chocolat," he said, "from your competitor down the street." Her eyes widened in mock horror. "Julien!" He laughed. "Exactly. Tastes like cardboard." She finally chuckled. The sound felt like a miracle. "I've had better," she admitted, sipping her tea. Then his tone shifted, gentler. "Elise, what you're doing here, it's rare. People know quality when they taste it. They just need reminding." She studied him, wondering who he truly was. "You speak like someone who knows what it takes to build something." He didn't answer, just looked at her, his silence heavy with truths he still couldn't say. Outside, a man in a dark coat snapped photos with a long lens and disappeared into the shadows. The days following the smear article were quieter than usual. Elise kept her chin high, but her eyes looked more tired, her smile slower to rise. Still, she worked with the same dedication, each croissant folded with care, every tart glazed as if it were the only one that mattered. Julien had become a regular fixture at the bakery. He came by early in the mornings, just as the scent of warm butter began drifting into the streets. Sometimes he brought coffee, sometimes a bouquet of lavender, but most often he simply brought his calm, steady presence. "Elise," he said one chilly Tuesday morning, "you ever think of leaving Paris?" She blinked, brushing flour off her apron. "Leave? This bakery is all I have. I don't mean giving up. I meant starting over somewhere that appreciates you." She studied him. "Appreciation comes and goes. I want to stand my ground. This little corner of Paris, it's mine." There was something in the way she said it that made his chest tighten. That fire, that quiet strength, he admired it more than he could say. Elise smiled faintly, then turned back to kneading her dough. "Why? Are you running from something?" Julien chuckled. "Maybe. Or maybe I just like quiet places with warm bread and brave people." She laughed then, and he tucked the sound away like a secret. Meanwhile, in Marcel's glass-walled office on the other side of town, a man dropped a folder onto the desk. "His name's Julien Mercier," the man said. "He's been stopping by the bakery almost every morning." Marcel flipped through the photos Julien chatting with Elise outside her shop, handing her coffee, leaning in close with a smile that looked far too comfortable. "Who is he?" Marcel asked. "Hard to say. No digital footprint. Pays in cash. Keeps a low profile." Marcel's brow furrowed. "Too low. That's deliberate." He leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen against his lips. "Find out where he lives, and what he wants with her." The man nodded and slipped away, leaving Marcel to stare out at the skyline. Elise was becoming a thorn, and now it seemed she had protection. He needed to cut that off fast. That evening, the bakery was nearly empty as dusk fell. Julian lingered, sipping coffee at the corner table while Elise cleaned up. "Stay for dinner?" she asked suddenly. He looked up, surprised. I was going to make something simple. You've kept me sane lately. Feels wrong letting you leave without a proper thank you." He smiled. "I'd love that." In the tiny kitchen behind the shop, they cooked side by side, he chopping shallots, she stirring a creamy sauce over low heat. They moved with an ease that made it feel like they'd done this 100 times before. Over dinner, Elise finally asked, "You never talk much about yourself. What do you do when you're not rescuing sad bakers?" Julien hesitated, setting down his fork. "Consulting. Investments. Nothing worth writing home about." She tilted her head. "Sounds vague." He gave a sheepish smile. "That's the point." Their eyes met across the table. "I think," Elise said softly, "you've been helping me more than I realize." Julien didn't deny it. He just looked at her with a quiet warmth. "I like watching you fight," he said. "You remind me what resilience looks like." Elise looked down, blinking fast. "Thank you." But even as her heart opened just a little more, the shadows outside grew longer. Across the street, a black car idled. Inside, Marcel's man lowered his camera, and for the first time he smiled because he had something Marcel could use. The air in Paris buzzed with anticipation. The annual Petite Patisserie baking competition, a beloved neighborhood event, was just a week away. It was modest in scale, but the winner often drew the attention of investors and local press. Elise had never entered. Her schedule, her debts, her fear of falling short, all had held her back. Until Julian. He leaned on the bakery's counter one morning, watching her decorate lemon tarts. "You should enter," he said, casually sipping his espresso. Elise laughed under her breath. "Right. I'll just go up against Marcel's army of pâtissiers and hope they forget how to use a piping bag." "I'm serious," Julian replied. "You've got more talent in your hands than most chefs I've met." She tilted her head. "Met? You say that like you've been around a lot of them." He froze a split second too long before brushing it off. "Used to dine out more than I should have, back when I wasn't addicted to your croissants." Elise shook her head, smirking, but her eyes softened. "I don't have the money for the entry fee," she finally said, not without skipping rent. I'll cover it, Julian said quickly, too quickly. She narrowed her gaze. Why? Because I believe in you. She hesitated. Her pride wanted to refuse, but her heart whispered that sometimes kindness wasn't charity, it was belief. Okay, she said quietly, but just the fee, and you have to promise not to bribe the judges with almond croissants. Julien smiled. Deal. Marcel seethed when he saw Elise's name on the entry list. The idea that she might stand beside his empire, even for a moment, burned. She won't make it to the judging table, he snapped to his assistant. Call the bank. Remind them Elise Fournier's debt contract includes an early repayment clause. I want it triggered. Today. Meanwhile, Elise prepared for the contest like a woman possessed. Her hands moved with fierce grace, testing flavor profiles, perfecting techniques. The bakery buzzed with fresh energy, and customers began returning drawn by the sweet aroma and her quiet determination. Late one evening, Julien stayed behind to help her clean. You're amazing, he said, gently placing washed bowls on a towel. She looked up from the sink. I'm terrified. You're allowed to be. She met his gaze. You've given me a chance, Julien. I don't know how to thank you. He hesitated, his voice lower. Just don't give up. Their hands brushed as they reached for the same towel. Elise looked away first, but the heat lingered. 2 days before the competition, a letter arrived. Elise tore it open, her eyes darting across the page, then widened in shock. They're calling in the debt, she whispered. What? Julien stepped closer. The bank. They want full repayment by Friday. If I can't, they'll seize the property. Julien's jaw clenched. He knew this wasn't coincidence. It was Marcel's hand pressing harder. You can't let them do this, he said. I don't have the money, Julien. He opened his mouth, ready to offer help, but stopped himself. Not yet. Not until she saw him truly. I'll figure something out, she said, folding the letter tightly. I always do. But Julien saw the way her shoulders slumped, the tremble in her fingers. That night, he didn't sleep. Instead, he made calls, quiet ones, to old connections, silent favors owed. By morning, he had what he needed. And Marcel? He'd feel the consequences soon enough. Julien waited in the shadowed corner of a quiet bistro just off Rue Saint-Antoine. The waiter had already brought his espresso, untouched and cooling fast. He kept his coat buttoned, his hat low, and his eyes fixed on the man sliding into the seat across from him. Marcel. The man looked polished, tailored suit, smug smirk, fingers drumming a rhythm of control on the table. He didn't bother with small talk. You've been busy, Marcel said. First the discounted suppliers, then the glowing article, and now the baking competition. Not very subtle, are you? Julien didn't flinch. You're threatening a woman who's done nothing wrong but protect her bakery. Marcel leaned in, voice low and cold. I'm protecting my investment. She sits on prime real estate and she's too stubborn to sell. I gave her a way out. She refused. That's not my fault. Julien kept his voice measured. You've gone too far. Marcel smirked. Says the man, hiding behind middlemen and anonymous favors. You think I don't know who you are? Julien Laurent, heir to the Laurent estate, owner of that little real estate firm in Montmartre. Very noble of you, playing poor in a bakery. Julien's jaw tensed. Marcel had done his homework. I don't care what you think you know, Julien said. Stay away from her. Marcel's grin faded. Then stay out of it, because if you don't, the next time I strike, she won't just lose her shop, she'll lose her name. Julien stared at him. You're threatening to ruin her reputation? Marcel pushed away from the table, standing slowly. It's business. She's a talented girl, but talent doesn't matter in this city if no one trusts your name. And with that, Marcel walked out into the Paris morning. Julien didn't move for a full minute. Then he pulled out his phone hesitated, and tapped a contact labeled ATN Legal. "I need you to start gathering records," he said. "Bank documents, supplier contracts, any sign. Marcel Devero has tampered with Elise Fournier's affairs." Quietly. He hung up, shoulders heavy. At the bakery, Elise was frosting eclairs with meticulous care. The contest was tomorrow. Her stomach fluttered, her chest felt tight, but her hands didn't shake. Julian stepped inside, watching her for a moment before speaking. "You look like someone about to win something big." She glanced up, surprised. "You're early. Wanted to check in, see how you're holding up." She hesitated. "Truth? I'm scared out of my mind." Julien smiled gently. Courage isn't about not being scared. She looked down, then back at him. "I don't know how to thank you." Julien's heart beat faster. He wanted to say, "You already have," but instead he said, "Just promise me something." "What?" "Don't let anyone convince you that you're not worth this." She blinked, caught off guard by the sincerity. "That's oddly specific." Julien gave a half smile. "Just promise me." "I promise." That night, after she locked up and went home to rest before the big day, Marcel's hired man arrived. He worked fast, tampering with the ovens, cutting electrical cords, and tossing sugar canisters onto damp floors. By the time he slipped out the back, Elise's entire kitchen was an unusable mess. But across the street, Julien sat in a parked car. He'd expected this, hoped he was wrong. He wasn't. As the man disappeared into the dark, Julien made another call. "Louis, I need a full crew at Patisserie Fournier tonight. New ovens, full cleanup. Install everything by dawn." "By dawn? That's impossible." Julien exhaled. "It has to be done. She can't know it was me." He hung up and watched the bakery he'd come to love slowly light up with quiet motion repairmen arriving, tools in hand, moving like ghosts in the night to restore everything before the morning sun. The first rays of sunlight spilled over the rooftops of Paris as Elise approached her bakery with an anxious heart and a box of her contest ingredients clutched in her arms. She'd barely slept, nerves knotting in her stomach since the previous evening. Today was her moment. Or it was supposed to be. But something felt off. As she slid her key into the front door and stepped inside, her breath caught in her throat. The kitchen was immaculate. Not just clean, gleaming. Her ovens stood shining and new. The cracked countertop had been replaced, and the flickering light near the sink now glowed steadily. The sugar that had been nearly gone was fully stocked. Even the broken timer she'd duct-taped weeks ago had been replaced. She stood frozen, mouth ajar. "What?" she whispered, walking deeper into the kitchen as if she might wake up at any second. "No, this can't be." She dropped the box onto the prep table, heart pounding. Everything was ready. Everything was working, but she knew she hadn't done any of it. There were no signs of entry, no notes, no hints. Who would do something like this, and why? Her hands trembled as she flicked on the ovens. They roared to life instantly. She blinked back tears. Somebody wanted her to succeed, and wanted her not to know who they were. For a long moment, Elise just stood there, one hand on her chest, the other on the polished edge of her work table. Then, as if possessed by a calm born from the storm she didn't see, she said aloud to the empty room, "Thank you, whoever you are." Across town, Julian stood at his window, looking out at the sunrise with bloodshot eyes and a weary soul. The night had cost him thousands and left him with no sleep, but he would have done it again. This wasn't about money. It never had been. He sipped bitter coffee and watched the light paint the city rooftops. His phone buzzed. A message from Etienne, his legal contact. Bank records retrieved. Evidence of bribery from Marcel confirmed. Working on tracing the sabotage next. Julian typed back, "Keep it quiet. I'll let you know when to act." Back at the bakery, Elise worked like she hadn't in months. She poured herself into every layer of puff pastry, every delicate piping swirl, every glaze. There was magic in her hands that morning, and it showed. Her assistant, Leia, arrived mid-morning and froze when she saw the new setup. "Did we win the lottery or something?" Elise laughed breathlessly. "I have no idea. I just walked in and everything was fixed." Leia looked around wide-eyed. "You think someone's trying to help you? Like an angel?" "Maybe," Elise said softly, her voice warm with wonder. "Or just someone who believes in me more than I do." Leia grinned and rolled up her sleeves. "Then let's make this the best day we've ever had." That afternoon, the baking contest drew hundreds. It was held in a courtyard lined with cherry trees, soft petals dusting the air as the scent of fresh pastries floated above the crowd. Elise stood at her table, nerves steeled by the morning's miracle. Her pastries light, fragrant, perfect, spoke for themselves. Judges circled, cameras clicked, crowds buzzed. And in the back, blending in with the onlookers, Julian watched. Hidden, still anonymous, but full of quiet pride. Until a hand clamped down on his arm. It was Marcel. "Don't look so proud of yourself," Marcel muttered through clenched teeth. "You may have saved her oven, but I've got one last card to play." Julien didn't respond, but inside he was already planning his next move. Because this wasn't over. Not yet. The crowd at the baking competition was still buzzing with excitement, unaware of the quiet battle unfolding behind the scenes. Julien slipped out from Marcel's grip without a word. There was no point in arguing, not yet. He had work to finish. Back at his flat overlooking the Seine, Julien sat at his desk flipping through documents Etienne had sent. Copies of suspicious transactions between Marcel and the bank manager, handwritten notes with details of Elise's debts, and now, surveillance footage from a nearby alley showing a man hired by Marcel sneaking behind Elise's bakery the night before the sabotage. Julien's fingers hovered over his phone. He could call Elise, tell her everything, come clean. But something in him hesitated. It wasn't fear of her rejection. It was the fear of taking away her moment. She had finally stood tall on her own, dazzling the judges with her pastries, winning the hearts of Parisians. He didn't want her to think it had all come from him. She needed to own her victory, not share it with a shadow. Instead, he picked up the phone and dialed Etienne. "It's time," Julien said. "I'll prepare the package for the authorities," Etienne replied. "And send a copy to Le Quotidien," Julien added. "Let the city see who Marcel really is." Meanwhile, Elise sat in the back room of her bakery, folding napkins and barely containing her nerves. Tomorrow was her big event, the cafe's 5-year anniversary, reimagined as a relaunch party to save her from closure. She had no idea who was helping her or why, but she was too close to the edge to question it anymore. She just needed to survive this one last test. As she worked, Leia peeked in. "You should see the front room," she whispered, eyes wide with excitement. "There's already a line out the door and they're asking for your pastries by name." Elise chuckled softly, wiping flour from her cheek. "Maybe this place still has a little magic left." "No," Leia corrected. "It has you." Late that night, Julien stood across the street from the bakery, watching through the glass as Elise adjusted decorations, her sleeves rolled up, curls pinned back, her brow furrowed with focus. He thought about stepping inside, but the moment didn't feel right. Not yet. Instead, he slipped an envelope into the mailbox next door addressed to the city prosecutor, with the return address from Etienne's firm. The next morning, Paris woke to headlines. "Local business tycoon under investigation for sabotage and fraud." Baking rivalry boils over in Paris scandal. Marcel's name was everywhere along with evidence of the bank bribery, the sabotage, and the smear campaign against Elise. Anonymous sources were credited, but Julien stayed in the background, just as he intended. At the bakery, Elise heard the news from a reporter who stopped by uninvited. "Any comment on Marcel Dupont's investigation?" the woman asked, thrusting a mic toward her. Elise blinked. "What?" "Documents surfaced early this morning. Your name's mentioned. Looks like you were the target of a coordinated attack." Leah gasped. Elise dropped her piping bag. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. It all made sense now. The sabotage, the debt, the rumors, and someone had been protecting her this entire time. "Do you know who's behind the leak?" Elise asked quietly. The reporter shrugged. "Anonymous. Some say it's an insider. Maybe someone close to you?" That evening, Elise sat alone on the front step of the bakery, dusk settling over the Parisian street. Her fingers toyed with the string of her apron. She didn't need to guess anymore. She knew who had been behind it all. But the question that lingered wasn't why he did it. It was, why didn't he tell her? And what did that say about the man she was beginning to care for? The morning sun bathed the bakery's storefront in soft gold as Elise adjusted the display trays. Her anniversary relaunch was already drawing a line of curious customers and old loyalists, some still clutching the newspaper that had broken the story on Marcel. Inside, the air was warm with anticipation and butter. Leah arranged napkins while sneaking glances at Elise. "You sure you're okay?" she asked gently. Elise nodded, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm just bracing. For what? For whatever comes next." Across town, Marcel wasn't bracing. He was exploding. His office was a mess of crumpled documents and overturned chairs. He slammed his fist against the wall. "That little baker," he hissed, pacing. "She thinks she can humiliate me? I'll end this today." His assistant stood in the doorway, pale and nervous. "Sir, maybe it's better to lay low until the press—" "Shut up," Marcel snapped. "I know exactly where she'll be." By mid-morning, the bakery was packed. The small outdoor space had transformed into a charming Parisian market square. Chalkboards displayed hand-lettered specials. Neighbors mingled with tourists. A string quartet played nearby. Elise stood near the counter, flushed with surprise and gratitude as customer after customer complimented her pastries. Then, the music stopped. Marcel stormed through the crowd, a storm in a tailored coat. "Elise Fournier," he called, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Tell them the truth. Tell them you cheated in the baking competition." The chatter quieted. Forks clinked on plates. Elise froze. "What are you talking about?" she asked, voice steady. "You think I don't know?" Marcel sneered. "You paid someone to steal my supplier list. You had help. That journalist, that discounted flour, your whole act is a lie." Gasps fluttered through the crowd. Then another voice cut in, calm but commanding. "Enough, Marcel." All heads turned. Julian stepped forward, no longer in his casual clothes but dressed impeccably. He looked every inch the man he had hidden composed, powerful, known. "Elise didn't cheat," he said, "but you did." Marcel's eyes widened. What are you doing here?" "I'm the one who leaked the documents," Julian said. "The forged receipts, the sabotage, the bribes." Whispers rippled through the crowd. "And just so everyone here is clear," Julian added, "my name is Julien Moreau. I'm the founder of Maison Moreau Holdings." There was a stunned silence. Even the street musicians seemed frozen. Elise looked at him like he was a stranger. "You're... what?" He turned toward her, voice gentler now. "I never meant to lie. I just wanted to help. to know you without any of this." Elise backed away a step. "So, you've been helping me all along, behind the curtain, like a show." "No," Julian said, pain flickering across his face. "It wasn't a game. I did it because you didn't trust me to handle it myself," Elise said, her voice cracking. "That's not true. You didn't even give me a choice, Julian." The weight of her disappointment landed harder than Marcel's accusations. Marcel, now furious and desperate, pointed wildly. "You think this changes anything? That people will just forget what she's done?" "They will," said a new voice. The city inspector emerged from the crowd holding a leather folder. "We've confirmed everything. Marcel Dupont, you're under formal investigation." A small cheer broke out. Marcel's face turned chalk white. He turned and left, swarmed immediately by press. The crowd turned back toward Elise and Julien. Some clapped, others murmured admiration. But Elise didn't hear any of it. She was staring at Julien. Everything she thought she knew about him had changed in a single breath, and for the first time in months, she didn't know what to say. The clinking of coffee cups and quiet conversation returned slowly to the bakery after Marcel's exit, but for Elise, everything remained suspended like the silence that hung between her and Julien. He stood only a few feet from her, but it felt like miles. "Elise, please," Julien said softly. "Let me explain." She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped around the counter and walked into the back kitchen, her breath catching as she shut the door behind her. The scent of vanilla and caramel filled the air, but it brought no comfort. Only questions. Julien hesitated before following. He didn't barge in. He waited at the threshold, unsure of his place now. "I only wanted to protect you," he said finally, "not deceive you." "You did both," Elise said, turning toward him with red-rimmed eyes. "You helped me behind my back. You created a version of this relationship that I didn't even know I was in. I never wanted to make you feel that way. Then why didn't you tell me the truth?" she asked, voice trembling. "Why, let me think we were just two people sharing morning coffee when you were orchestrating everything behind the scenes?" Julien took a breath. "Because every time I've revealed who I am in the past, people treated me differently. They either feared me, used me, or loved the version of me that wasn't real. I didn't want that with you." She looked at him, hurt but searching. "So you hid." "Yes, because for once I wanted someone to see me. Not the name, not the money, just me." Elise blinked hard. "And what if I had fallen in love with the version of you I thought I knew? Would you have ever told me?" "I was going to," he said. "I just didn't know when or how." A long pause stretched between them. "I appreciate everything you did," she said quietly. "I do. You saved my business, my reputation, but trust is something I don't give lightly, and you broke it without meaning to." He nodded, chest tight. "So, where does that leave us?" Elise looked down, then back up at him. "I don't know yet. I need time, space." "I understand," he said, his voice low. He turned to leave, but hesitated at the door. "For what it's worth," he added, "I meant every word I said over coffee. The dreams, the memories, none of it was fake." Elise gave a faint nod. And just like that, he was gone. That night, the bakery glowed with warm lights, but inside Elise worked alone, washing dishes and replaying everything in her mind. She thought about the mornings they spent talking about childhood, about dreams of starting fresh. She thought about the way Julien always seemed to know exactly when she was at her lowest, the way he never asked for credit. He had been there in every moment, silently keeping her afloat. But silence could hurt, too. The next morning, the papers were filled with news. Marcel's empire was under investigation. Photos of Julien revealing his identity had gone viral. Public support for Elise surged. But she stayed quiet. She declined interviews. She turned down investors who now suddenly remembered her name. Instead, she spent the day kneading dough, measuring flour, and staring out the window at the city she still loved and the man she wasn't sure she could trust again. That evening, Leah walked in holding 2 cups of coffee. "Don't kill me," she said, "but one of these is from Julien." Elise blinked. "He came by? He didn't ask to see you, just left it. Said to tell you. He'll wait, as long as it takes." Elise stared at the cup in silence. Not everything could be fixed overnight. But maybe, just maybe, it didn't have to be broken forever. The aroma of cardamom and honey filled the bakery once again. Elise stood by the counter, brushing powdered sugar over a fresh batch of croissants. The shop hadn't felt this alive in weeks. Her hands moved with a quiet steadiness, but inside, she was anything but calm. The event had been a success beyond what she imagined. Investors, newly interested after Julian's public reveal, were calling non-stop. Her inbox overflowed with invitations, media requests, and glowing reviews. But all Elise wanted was peace and clarity. She had declined every offer so far. Her heart wasn't in expansion plans or interviews, not yet, not until she could look Julian in the eye again and know what she wanted. "Big day," Leah said as she flipped the bakery's sign to open. "You know, you might actually be famous now." Elise gave a tired smile. "Not exactly how I wanted it." "You deserve it, Elise," Leah said gently. "Not because of Julien, not because of some article, but because you never gave up. People see that." Elise nodded, her eyes drifting toward the window. Outside, Paris moved on as always, busy, beautiful, a little indifferent. But something had shifted. That afternoon, Elise finally responded to one of the investor emails. Then another, then 2 more. She wasn't committing yet, but she was listening. One reply led to a video call. A woman named Simone, representing a women-led culinary foundation, offered a grant specifically designed for small bakers with original recipes. "You'd retain full ownership," Simone explained. "We just believe in backing talent that's already proven itself." Elise hesitated. "I'd need a few days." Simone smiled. "You've already earned them." By the end of the week, Elise signed the papers. The bakery would remain hers, fully hers. But now she had the funds to remodel, hire help, and even test new recipes. And this time it wasn't a gift dropped quietly by someone else. It was her decision made with full knowledge, full power. On Sunday, Elise stood outside her shop, holding 2 cups of coffee. Julian approached quietly, hands tucked in his coat pockets. He looked tired, but calm. "I didn't expect you to wait," he said softly. "I didn't expect you to leave a cup of coffee every day," Elise replied. He gave a faint smile. "I wasn't sure what else to do." Elise handed him one of the cups. "This time, I thought we could have it together." They sat on the bench just outside the bakery, the city glowing behind them. "I got the grant," Elise said, looking at the street instead of him. "I know," he replied. "Simone told me." Elise raised an eyebrow. "You knew her?" Julian chuckled. "I recommended your name, but she made her own call." For a moment, silence stretched between them again. "You did a lot for me, Julian. More than I even realized," she said. "I didn't do it for recognition." "I know," she whispered, "but I also know I can't build a future with someone I don't fully trust." Julian nodded slowly, the words hitting harder than he let on. "But," Elise continued, "people can grow, learn, rebuild." He turned to her, hopeful. "I'm not promising anything yet," she said gently, "but I'm willing to try, honestly. This time, with no secrets between us." Julian exhaled. That's all I want." They clinked their paper cups together. "To honesty," Elise said. "To second chances," Julian replied. They sat quietly, sipping coffee, watching the world go by, not as saviors or victims, not as millionaire and baker, but simply as two people trying to begin again. The newly painted walls of the bakery gleamed in soft pastel hues, warm and inviting. The glass display shimmered under golden lights, showcasing rows of tartelettes, madeleines, and eclairs that looked like small works of art. But nothing inside sparkled more than Elise's eyes as she moved from table to counter, organizing samples for her upcoming soft relaunch. It had taken weeks of reflection, long talks with Leia, and quiet evenings staring out of the apartment window, but Elise had finally come to peace with the truth Julian's love wasn't a performance, and neither was his silence. He had helped her stand not because she was fragile, but because he believed she was worth standing for. That morning, she found herself composing a message and deleting it 3 times before sending. "Would you like to stop by the bakery today? I've got something new I want your opinion on." No emojis, no pressure, just hope. Julien arrived just past noon, a small bouquet of wildflowers in hand. "You still prefer daisies over roses, right?" he asked as he stepped inside. She smiled. "I never said that." "No, but you frowned at roses once and smiled at daisies 3 times, he said, laying the bouquet gently on the counter. Elise's heart softened at how closely he had been paying attention. "Come," she said, motioning toward the kitchen. "I want you to try something." They sat at the prep table, a delicate fig tart between them. Julien took one bite and closed his eyes. "Elise, this might be your best yet. I was thinking of naming it the Quiet One," she said, "for all the things that were done silently, but with heart." Julien set his fork down, his expression turning more serious. "I want to be better at the loud things too, the kind that need words, apologies, promises." She looked at him, really looked at him. Gone was the polished stranger who first walked through her door pretending to be just a man looking for a baguette. What remained was someone who had risked his pride for her peace. "I hated that you kept it from me," she admitted, "but I never doubted the way you made me feel safe, or seen. I just didn't want to lose what we had by revealing something that might make you doubt it. You made me doubt you, not us," she said gently. "And that's something we can still rebuild, if we're both in it." "I'm in it," Julian said without hesitation, "not as a benefactor or a savior, just as someone who loves you." Elise felt the tears before she could stop them, but they weren't sad. They were relief. "I was thinking," she said, brushing her cheek with her sleeve, "what if we expanded the bakery together?" Julien blinked. "You mean, yes, as partners. I have investors, sure, but I want you in the kitchen sometimes, not just at the margins. I want to build something that's ours." He laughed, a quiet, amazed sound. "Just don't ask me to make croissants." "You'll learn," she grinned. "Eventually." They talked through the afternoon about shop layouts, marketing ideas, even a community pastry class for local teens. But more than anything, they talked like people who'd stopped pretending and finally let their hearts lead. As dusk settled over Paris and the scent of vanilla and browned butter drifted through the open window, Elise reached for Julien's hand. "I'm glad you walked in that day," she said softly. "Me too," he whispered. "I didn't know it then, but I found everything I didn't know I was missing." They sat in the gentle quiet of the bakery, hands clasped across a worn wooden table, 2 lives once defined by secrets, now preparing to rise together like the perfect loaf of bread. The sun filtered softly through the sheer curtains of the new storefront on Rue de l'Espoir, Street of Hope. It was no longer just Elise's bakery. A newly mounted brass plaque beside the door now read, "Maison Lumière by Elise and Julien." Inside, the air carried that perfect blend of fresh brioche and warm vanilla, the kind of scent that made strangers pause, take a deep breath, and smile. It was opening day, and already a small crowd had begun to gather outside, peeking in through the window at the rows of pastries and flower arrangements. Elise stood behind the counter, her apron spotless for once, her eyes scanning the room with a blend of pride and disbelief. Her hands still remembered the old struggle, the fear of losing everything, the quiet heartbreak of sacrifice. But this moment, this space, was hers. The battle had forged her strength, and love had sealed it. Julien stood beside her, sleeves rolled, hair tousled, face flushed from carrying crates earlier that morning. "You ready?" he asked, brushing a stray crumb from her shoulder. "Ready as I'll ever be," she said with a nervous laugh. "Then let's do it. Together." She nodded, and he flipped the sign on the door from closed to open. The first customers streamed in, faces lighting up at the elegant display and the warmth of the welcome. A young mother with her daughter tried the lemon madeleines. A retired chef praised the rustic fig tart. Journalists snapped photos and scribbled quotes. But amid the buzz, Julian noticed Elise scanning the room again, her brows drawing together. "What is it?" he asked, leaning in. "Nothing," she murmured, then hesitated. "It's just, I used to stand alone behind a counter and wonder if people would come. Now I'm not alone, and they're here." Julien smiled. "They're not just here for the pastries." She turned to look at him. "Thank you," she said, voice trembling slightly. "You earned this. I just helped light the way." Later that evening, after the last customer had left and the lights had dimmed to a soft glow, they sat together by the window, each with a cup of tea. The air had shifted not with tension, but with a peaceful kind of exhaustion that only comes after doing something meaningful. Elise leaned her head on Julien's shoulder. "I used to think that love had to be big and loud like fireworks, but yours was steady, like the oven that never lets the flame go out." Julien's arm curled around her. "And yours reminded me that wealth means nothing without purpose. You gave me a reason to show up not as a name or a title, but as a man who wants to belong somewhere real." They sat in silence for a while, watching the final golden glow of Paris settle over the quiet street. "I've been thinking," Elise said softly. "What if we start a small pastry workshop on weekends, for kids in the neighborhood? Teach them that even in a tiny kitchen magic can happen." Julien's eyes lit up. "That's exactly the kind of legacy I want. Let's do it." And so it began. Not just a bakery, not just a romance, but a new chapter rooted in resilience, compassion, and trust. The city may have been built on grandeur, but on Rue de l'Espoir, something even rarer bloomed, a love story written not in gold, but in flour, dusted aprons, repaired ovens, and quiet courage. As the shop faded into night and the scent of baked goods lingered in the air, Elise and Julian stood hand in hand, looking out at the street where everything had once begun. "Ready for tomorrow?" he asked. She smiled, her heart full. "Always." Thank you for watching till the end. If this story touched your heart, made you think, or brought a tear to your eye, that's why we tell it. Stay with us for more powerful stories. See you next time.